Hello.
All right, Diecast SuperCon. I'm over here on the Jada main stage with Butch Patrick. You know Butch as Edward Wolfgang Munster from the show The Munsters. How you doing today, Butch?
Doing great, doing great. A great show. A lot of fans of cars and TV shows prior to the current grouping back in the black and white days.
Right. So I met you at the One of Us Comics grand opening. What was that? That was a couple months ago now. And I was just, honestly, I was very shocked to learn how many different fandoms you're into. I mean, you've got the cars and the art and the comics and the figures. Just, you have been able to take a brand from, 50 years ago and keep it going and keep it relevant in today's market.
You know, the one thing interesting about the Munsters is, yes, it falls into so many different categories. It's, pop culture in the 60s. The George Barris vehicles led us into the die-cast culture and all the other cars and models and toys and collectibles and dolls and comic books and so on and so on. So it allows me a very wide canvas of which to go paint the Munsters image around.
And you signed a couple of pictures for my children, and I took them home, and my kids are like, what is this? And I told them, I said, it's the Munsters. And they immediately go to the internet, they look it up, they find it streaming, and now my kids are addicted to Munsters, and I feel like you have that effect. You go into spaces, people meet you, the parents know you,
Yep.
and then the kids get to know you, and all of a sudden this whole new market opens up for this amazing, incredible show.
It's interesting that the 60s in general was such a wonderful decade for pop culture, music, art, movies, cars, just muscle cars and everything else. But yeah, it's if the kids get a chance and are introduced to it, most of them like it, especially with their parents and their grandparents. Like a lot of the people that come to the table, I will sign something for someone in their family that it would mean a lot to them, that they have fond memories of watching it with a loved one, of something like that. So we have multi-generational, 61 years now and counting, and it's been very good to me.
Well, and it's kind of funny, too, because then after they found out who Butch Patrick was and they started watching the show,
Yeah.
then I was able to tell them that these books that I was reading to them ever since they were babies by Fred Gwynne, with all the puns in there,
Yep.
that also comes out of his fame from that show, from Car 54 or whatever, and so that added a whole other level of familiarity with the content.
Well, Fred Gwynne, one of the interesting things about that show was it was really a well-done show. It was special. It was kind of like a perfect storm. You had very good talent. You had the producers and the writers of Leave It to Beaver, who had come off a very good 6-year run, and they applied their talent with the Universal Monsters. And Fred and Al had come from Car 54, Where Are You? Yvonne DiCarlo was a major movie star. So on paper, it looked pretty goofy, but it came together as a believable family unit of monsters for a couple years. And it's, like I say, it's lived on for a little 2-year show with 70 episodes. It's been merchandised heavily, and it's been popular. It's like the Fall Out Boy music we were listening to before I came up. It's been resurrected over and over and over again, and I'm very lucky to have been part of it.
Well, and that is a very interesting pop culture phenomenon. When something is, in reality, very, very short, how much longevity it has, because the show only had 72 episodes. It only ran for 2 years, but everybody knows it.
They do. I have the best of both worlds, too. I can walk around and pretty much be myself. Nobody really recognizes me. Occasionally, once in a while. But as soon as you present the picture of Eddie Munster, they immediately say, oh, that was you? And it's got fond memories, and it's got lasting power, and every person that ever had a widow's peak comes up to me and says, oh my God, you ruined my life. I was called Eddie Munster in junior high school.
I was about to say, on the recognition front, to be fair, if you grease painted the V on your forehead, a lot more people would recognize you.
You know you've arrived when there's actually a dictionary that has a picture when it says widow's peak. So the definition of widow's peak, they show a picture of Eddie Munster.
That's fantastic. Let's talk about your cars. So one of the things that I think is really fantastic about the business that you have built around the Munsters is that you recognize that, some of the most iconic pieces of that show are the two vehicles. So you've had incredibly authentic reproductions made that you take around and tour with. And tell us a little bit about that process.
Okay, well, like I say, George Barris supplied us with the Munster coach, and then a few episodes later, we had a show where we lost the Munster coach, and Grandpa built the Dragula. So we had 2 Barris cars early on in the show. I was lucky enough to visit George once a week down at his shop, saw all of the stuff he was doing and all the celebrities. And George Barris was literally, you talk about the king of the customizers. That moniker stuck because he not only did personal cars for himself, then he did the celebrity cars, and then he did the movie cars. So in the 60s and 70s, if you didn't have a George Barris car, you weren't part of the cool club. And that's kind of where I started with my love affair. And my first license was in 1969 when I turned 16. And I had a 69 Mach 1, and then I got a 69 427 Corvette. But I grew up around a really good time of drag racing, George Barris, car culture. And to this day, that window from about 65 to 74 is one of the strongest decades for cars, TV, music, and everything else cool.
Absolutely, absolutely. And again, talking about like the limited appearances of certain things in pop culture and then how long they last, the Dragula was only one episode.
It was only on one episode, and then they used it in the final credits. They had the Munster coach pull up to the house, and then the Dragula followed it. But yeah, for only being in one episode, that car is extremely famous. And I mean, it gets as much attention as my Munster coach. But the Dragula, my Dragula is about 500 horse, where the original only had 300 because technology's come a little bit further along. But I got a full-on roller motor in it with a 3,000 stall speed and a beefed-up power glide. So it's a real dragster.
So that's the Dragula. What are the specs on the Monster Coach?
I built my coach around a Jegs crate motor, a 347 stroker motor, about 450 horse as well. But now they've got these injectors, carburetors that look like injectors, or vice versa. But anyway, the original was injected, and this one has 10 carburetors, but we're only hooking up 6 of them. So it's basically a 6-pack. But it's got all 10 carburetors for visuals. It's extremely accurate as well.
Nice. So when you take these out to car shows or when they're hired out for conventions or whatever, which of the vehicles do you think is more of a draw for the folks coming in?
Well, I only travel with one or the other. I have a 22-foot trailer. I used to travel with a 34-foot trailer. Now you either get the Munster coach, because it's like 19 feet long, or you get the Dragula, and I have a one-off Eddie chopper.
So which one is more requested by people who are booking you?
The Munster coach.
The Munster coach
Sure.
is the more iconic. It's in more shows.
Yeah.
Now, so they did use the Dragula in one episode, but then it was in the end credits, like you said,
Yep.
and they used it for the movie Munster Go Home.
Right. They configured it a little differently. They took the canopy off it for Herman to drive it, so they put a roll bar on it, and that's where it even got more screen time, was in the movie Munster Go Home. Absolutely. My original Dragula was like that I bought from a guy, but he was a Chevy guy, so my new one that I had built was accurate Ford, small block Ford.
Nice. Now, you brought some die-cast with you because, again, I love so much how much of a business you have made around this thing that you did so long ago. You've done music. We were trying to get the music video up for Whatever Happened to Eddie Munster. If you guys, you got to look this up. They have it on YouTube. It's Eddie and the Monsters, not the Munsters, and it's Whatever Happened to Eddie Munster. And it's a very, very young Butch reprising his role as like a young 20s, maybe late teens Eddie Munster.
And there was something interesting about that. We were the first unsigned act ever to be on MTV back in 1982, back when payola and pay-for-play was pretty much running rampant in the music industry. We went to New York and BS'd our way up the tower, and MTV actually aired it without a record deal, and they formed the Basement Tapes TV show from that concept. So I would like to think that our little one-hit semi-wonder or semi-hit wonder actually helped a lot of other people get some notoriety with their bands, because everybody had a video camera and they had music, but not everybody had a record deal.
Right. So you did the video, and then you were telling me that you also had like a doo-wop album.
I did in the early 70s, I went on American Bandstand with Metro Media Records to try to fill in. Bobby Sherman had left them, and they wanted to do another teeny bop thing. So we followed David Cassidy around the country, and Sugarloaf was my studio band.
Nice, nice. And then at your booth, you've got die-cast models of both the Dragula and the Munster coach, except it's called the Barris coach for licensing reasons.
Yep.
And here today, we have for sale some very limited gold versions of
Yeah, they presented. I was up on the big booth yesterday, and they came up with only 25 of them, and they're awesome. They're gold with white tires, super limited edition run. I signed about 10 of them for some lucky people that got in to buy them, but I'm pretty sure there's a few of them left on the floor. If someone asks around, you might be able to catch one, and I'll be able to sign it for you because I will be here the rest of the day and tomorrow.
Nice, nice. So up at the booth, you've got T-shirts, you've got the die cast, you've got 8x10s, you've got lots of fun stuff up there.
Caps, books, stickers, yeah.
And anything that you purchase at Butch's booth, he will sign for you right there on the spot.
Yeah.
And photos are available.
Yep.
Cool.
Yeah.
And let's see. Oh, let's talk about your film and TV career after the Munsters, because I know you've done a bunch of cameos and things, but you got some other stuff in there too.
Well, I worked from 1960 to 1974. The Munsters happened to be right in the middle. I was lucky. I was as a kid, I stumbled into the business. I was never an actor. I was just a kid that could memorize lines and not be intimidated by the people around me. But I did the first month at General Hospital back in the day in 61 or 2. I did the last year of the Real McCoys. I did the Munsters. I did 9 episodes of My Three Sons. And then I did a Saturday morning series called Lidsville. But in between, I did about 75 guest starring roles in 25 movies and a lot of commercials, as kids did back then, a lot of cereal commercials and toy commercials. So I had a nice little run for about 14 years. But as soon as I turned 21, I wanted to become a drag racer. Unfortunately, the sport was a little more expensive than I could afford, but I had the luxury of hanging out with Prudhomme and McEwen and Jack Christman and all the great racers back then, which was the prime time of drag racing was 1970 to 1974.
Nice. And then when there was a revamp movie that came out, right? And you did a cameo in that one?
This Rob Zombie movie?
Yeah.
Recently, Rob Zombie did a nice remake. And that wasn't really a remake. It was sort of a prequel, which he explained to the world how Herman and Lily and Grandpa all wound up meeting in the old country and came to America. So, yeah, I had the luxury of working with Rob on that. Rob's obviously a huge Munsters fan as well. One of my favorite videos is Dragula, even though he's driving the Munster coach.
Right. No, so a question that I had is, so you worked on the original, and then you were able to be on set for this reboot, this prequel. What is that like?
He did that in secret over in Hungary. I wasn't on set. I just did the voiceover work for him. But I did do a cameo with Pat Priest, Yvonne DiCarlo, and Al Lewis for Edward Herrmann's movie in 1993 called The Munsters Today. That was interesting to do as well. It's fun. It's interesting to look back upon it. It's been redone 5 different times for 5 different series. 5 movies, 1 series. It's always fun to see everybody's take on it. There's a new take, James Wan, who does the Insidious and he's got another, the Insidious franchise and the Saw franchise. He's looking to do a remake of the Munsters.
Oh, another one. Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. So I told you my kids got into this after I saw you the last time, right? My 11-year-old says to me, he said, Dad, so that's Herman Munster? I said, yes. He goes, and that's Lily Munster? I said, yes. And that's Grandpa Munster? I said, yes.
Yeah.
But that's her dad, right? Yeah. So why do Dad and her husband have the same last name? Why is it Grandpa Munster?
Yeah, it's called creative license in Hollywood.
Well, no, see, you just had an opportunity right there to come up with canon that everybody would have believed because it came straight from Butch Patrick, and that would have been the reason, canonically, for why it was Grandpa Munster and Herman Munster.
Grandpa was Dracula, Count Dracula. They stretched the truth and they allowed a little bit. It's kind of like, Herman and Lily had an offspring that was a werewolf. How did that come about?
Right, and then, there was a part, though, because Grandpa originally was very, very Dracula.
Yep.
And then they toned it down over the series.
Yeah, over the first 7 or 8 episodes, the makeup was all over the place before they settled into the role. Absolutely.
Nice. Okay, so Butch is right upstairs. He's right on that corner right there. So as you get off of the catwalk, you take a right. He's over in front of Neverland. He's got all of his merch available there.
Yep.
He is available for questions and photos and autographs, and he's just a wealth of knowledge. And I very much appreciate the time you've taken with me here today. Thanks, Butch.
It's been a great show. Thanks.